What's going on, y'all? It's the Jamaican Esquire coming to you live and direct. No, I'm not working from home. I'm working from the office today. So I am going to give you my words here. Usually, I'm working from home, but not today. Still casual, though. Just here at the office. So the Black Lives Matter sign is getting ready to go down, y'all. It's getting ready to go down. You ready? I mean, it's been since 2020 that sign has been up, a little less than 4 years. And I don't want y'all to forget about the history around how that sign even came to be, because that's very important. In May of 2020, out in Minnesota, a man was accused of giving a counterfeit $20 bill to a store clerk. And the person said, the $20 bill is counterfeit, called the police. Derek Chauvin is one of the police officers that end up coming on the scene. And Mr. Floyd was pleading his case. I think he hopped into like a G-Wagon or something. It was a very nice car that he hopped into. He pleaded his case that it wasn't a counterfeit. Didn't want to hear it. Threw him to the ground and placed his knee on his neck, which at that time and still is a prohibited move from officers to do to detain someone, because it cuts off their airflow. So they had him down there, and he's screaming for his mom, and he eventually passed away after being choked pretty much by this officer. Getting fast forward, the officer gets convicted and is now in prison. Trump is thinking about pardoning that individual, which is crazy to me, but that's a whole nother subject. So based on that, there were successive. There are Ahmaud Arbery, there were other Breonna Taylor, there were other black people whose lives were taken by police around that time. This was about the start of the pandemic. Everybody was home, a lot of pent-up anger about that as well, and uncertainty. And then we just see these, live televised killings of black people on TV. So Muriel Bowser, who at the time, a lot of people don't realize it, but Muriel Bowser at that time was joining in the fight to combat against protesters. So there were protests on U Street, there were protests at the White House. There was one particular protest at the White House where they used a helicopter to try to scare away protesters. They had the helicopter flying low to try to scare away protesters. Then they were using MPD was using tear gas, and there ended up being a hero on Swan Street hero. The protesters ran into their house to save themselves. This is what was happening, yes, and it was 2020. And then there was the Lafayette Square incident. And the Lafayette Square incident is significant because that was a protest against Donald Trump, who at the time was, pretty much praising himself for how he was handling the protests. He was calling for police to be aggressive towards protesters. He was, calling out Antifa, BLM at the time. So there was a lot of aggression from the police versus the protesters. Then Muriel Bowser stepped in and she wanted to institute a curfew where no one, unless you're an essential employee somehow, no one was to be on the streets of DC after a certain time. I believe it was like 6 or 8 o'clock. And when my team saw this, and at the time we were representing Black Lives Matter DC, we said no, that there's it is unconstitutional. We are absolutely challenging that. So we challenged the curfew instituted by Muriel Bowser. I believe it was like the second day of the curfew and we were challenging that because we were like, this is wild. Anybody on the street, they're basically trying to quell the First Amendment by using this curfew to be able to take people off the streets at nighttime, because that's when a lot of the protests were occurring, were at nighttime. So we get me and my associate at the time, we got the filing together, run it down to the courthouse, serve it on the district, and the next day we're going back and forth with the district about this injunction, and then we get a message from them later on that day that they decided that they were going to lift the curfew. So that would make our injunction moot at that point. Protests were still going on, but they decided that they were going to lift that curfew. Beautiful, beautiful victory for my firm and also for Black Lives Matter. The very next day, Black Lives Matter was painted right outside the White House. And for me, being a part of that and seeing that being done, after suing them, right, through Black Lives Matter being the plaintiff, seeing that being done, for us, that was a huge gesture from Muriel Bowser that she was going to protect us. And obviously, Trump got voted out of the White House. Biden and Harris were in the White House. Now he's back. And the thing that frustrates me right now is that he's back, but Muriel Bowser is still acquiescing. And a lot of people are thinking that she's doing something different. But even that first time around, she's always been a law and order mayor. That first time around, she was still assisting him up until the time that it was no longer popular. So what are we going to do about this? This mural, that's been around for almost 5 years, is now being torn down. Not to mention, don't forget about, there were signs, there were paintings all throughout. If you go on my Instagram page, you'll see it all throughout the District of Columbia around that time. And that piece of history is now trying to be erased by this administration. And it seems that nobody that's in a position of power is willing to step up and fight back, except for Al Green. Shout to Al Green. Except for Al Green. No one is willing to step up and speak out against this guy. And why is that? What is the angle on that? If we all, with our phones, with our technology that we have today, if we all use our own voices to stand up against this, we can take back the power. And I'm not saying that, you have to have voted against Trump. I understand that there's some of y'all, I don't even understand why, knowing everything that you knew, voted for Trump. And now you're seeing the consequences very early on, because again, we're not even 100 days in, right? So y'all are seeing the erosion of our democracy through the second Trump administration. The first time he was in there, he packed the courts, right? Which led to the reversal of Roe v. Wade. Now, we got the reversal of affirmative action, and now he's dismantled a lot of agencies that were, trying to promote diversity and have more Black people where there was just no Black people at all, right? So now, what are we going to do as a people? For me, I'm using my talents in the only way that I know how, and that's being a lawyer and making sure that the rule of law is upheld and that my people are protected. But for you sitting at home, you have to realize what you're